In today's video, Chicago has suffered one of its deadliest Labor Day weekends. The president has now reacted to it. He has confirmed he is sending National Guard troops into the city. And finally, a federal court judge has ruled against the president. You're going to want to stick around to hear more about that. And as usual, we'll show you what both sides are saying and then give you the bottom line.
Mind up on Chicago, though?
Well, we're going in. I didn't say when. We're going in. When you lose, look, I have an obligation. This isn't a political thing. I have an obligation. When we lose, when 20 people are killed over the last 2.5 weeks and 75 are shot with bullets. So let me tell you a little story about a place called D.C., District of Columbia, right here where we are. It's now a safe zone. We have no crime. It's in such great shape. You can go and actually walk with your children, your wife, your husband. You can walk right down the middle of the street. You're not going to be shot, Peter. You're safe. Chicago is certainly going to be high. I would love to have him call. I would love the governor of Illinois. I'd be honored to take his call. All he has to do is say, sir, we need help. It's out of control. And everyone knows it is. He's not kidding anyone. I would love to have... I would say Governor Moore call, because I watched him over the weekend trying to explain that Baltimore, what they need is housing. No, they don't need housing. They need to get rid of the criminals. These are hardcore criminals.
All right, so that was President Trump earlier in the Oval Office when he made an announcement about moving Spacecom from Colorado to Alabama. It's going to create 30,000 jobs. But the matter at hand right now is crime. And the governor and the mayor, and I'm talking about Illinois and Chicago, are continuing to make a fool of themselves. They're still putting up a fight. You got the mayor screaming earlier this morning, and then you got the governor pretty much saying, hey, crime is crime, especially in a big city. He's not looking for help. And so in this video, we're going to continue to show you what both sides are saying and obviously expose the hypocrisy, starting with what happened over this past weekend in Chicago. Take a look.
Well, President Trump this morning calling Chicago, quote, the worst and most dangerous city in the world by far. That after at least 7 people were killed, dozens others were injured by shootings over Labor Day weekend. And the mayor there, though, is pushing back on the president's efforts to combat crime and his offers to do so. Mike Tobin is live from Chicago and has more. Hi, Mike.
And Dana, we're still waiting on the official Chicago police tally of weekend violence. But right now, the numbers we see are that 54 people were shot, 7 people were killed. Compare that to the 4th of July holiday weekend, in which 44 people were shot, 6 people were killed. As you mentioned, President Trump has weighed in on Truth Social a couple of times, his latest post saying that Chicago is the murder capital of the world.
It seems like this freaking back and forth is continuing to escalate. I'm laughing because at some capacity, this is just a complete joke to me that you have a governor and a mayor who are responsible for the lives of the people that elected them, and they are willing to put those same lives at risk because they want to fight against the president. Now, we both know, me and you, that the president really doesn't have the authority to just deploy the National Guard willy-nilly. We know that. And the best case scenario is that there would be a collaboration between the governor and the president. But of course, that isn't going to happen. And as you guys know, I'm a results-driven guy, which is why you got to shake your head when the president posted this earlier this morning. At least 54 people were shot over the weekend. 8 people were killed. The last 2 weekends were similar. Chicago is the worst and most dangerous city in the world by far. Pritzker needs help badly. He just doesn't know it yet. I will solve this crime problem fast, just like I did in D.C. Chicago will be safe again and soon. And that last part is what's going to trigger the media and people on the left. When he says, I will solve the crime problem fast, they take that as, oh, well, what are you going to do, Mr. President? Well, it sounds like to me, he's going to do your job, which is what the president shouldn't be doing. But when you're talking about keeping American people safe, what choice does he really have?
Well, my concern is you have leaders in Chicago that see this. As you say, we've been reading about this for years now, every weekend, and maybe crime has gone down. But, you know, we had the mayor of Chicago on last week saying, oh, we don't need any more police officers. Police officers aren't the answer. No police officers. You know, I think he said no 5 times. You look what's happening this weekend. You look so, you know, I actually think that J.B. Pritzker should do something radical. I think he should pick up the phone, call the president, and say, you know and I know you don't have the constitutional authority to deploy the National Guard here and to police my. You can do that in D.C., you can't do that in Chicago. But let's partner up. These are the most dangerous parts of my state. We would love to figure out how to have a partnership that's constitutional, that respects the sort of balance of federalism between the federal government and the state government. And let's work together to save lives. Because right now, just hey, nothing to see here moving along. No problem here. Hey, Donald Trump, we don't need you. And, the mayor talking about we're going to protect people's dignity in our city. Well, protect their lives. That's protecting their dignity.
Yeah, see, it sounds like I don't need to make the argument on behalf of President Trump. Morning Joe is doing a good job of that. And I believe J.B. Pritzker and Mayor Brendan Johnson should tune in because he's spot on about that. Why don't you just work with the president on this? The mayor of D.C. did. Now, of course, the president has a different level of authority over D.C. than he does Illinois. We know that. Okay. But the results tell the story. This is why he posted this yesterday. Mayor Muriel Bowser of D.C. has become very popular because she worked with me and my great people in bringing crime down to virtually nothing in D.C. Her statements and actions were positive, instead of others like Pritzker, Westmore, New Scum, and the 5% approval rated mayor of Chicago who spend all of their time trying to justify violent crime instead of working with us to completely eliminate it, which we have done in Washington, D.C., which is now a crime-free zone. And that's the bottom line here, is just work with them if you really care about the people you say you're fighting for, right? Wouldn't that be what you should be talking about? But of course, J.B. Pritzker is not following the advice of any of us, quite frankly, because here's what he said earlier this morning.
You're going to hear people, especially this past weekend, 54 shot, 7 dead. Yeah. They're going to say, the city's not safe. Would you ask your friends to ride the L after midnight or after, 9 o'clock at night even? To
of course you wouldn't.
To the city from O'Hare.
Look, big cities have crime. There's no doubt about it.
Of course.
But let's just pay attention to what President Trump is doing targeting Chicago. He's overlooking red states that have much higher crime rates.
Yeah. So what the governor is doing there is deflecting, right? He doesn't want to actually answer the question. No, he wouldn't allow his children or his good friends to be in these crime-ridden areas in the city of Chicago. But let's just address his talking point there, because if we were debating this live, that would be one that would come from people on the left. They would say that red states have higher crime rates than blue states. Yeah. But what about the fact that blue cities have higher crime rates than red cities? We know that urban areas are predominantly governed by who? Democrats. We know that urban areas have the highest concentration of what? The population. So to just throw out red states have higher crime rates than blue states is not really telling the full picture. Crime is crime at the end of the day. And I guarantee the president has no issue with collaborating with a red state versus a blue state. So I think that needs to be addressed. Now, that's what the governor had to say. But what does the mayor have to say?
Are you prepared to defend this land that was built by slaves, a land that was built by indigenous people, a land that is built by workers? Are you prepared to defend this land?
Defend what?
The people united will always prevail. I need you all to stand firm, to stand strong. If this president decides to continue to break this Constitution.
I'm sorry, man. I can't take Mayor Brandon Johnson seriously. Like, imagine spewing those words like out loud right now in front of thousands of people, saying that exact language, that we are going to defend what exactly? Are you calling for an insurrection? Because that's what it sounds like. I mean, these people, man, I'm telling you. And this is what the people of Chicago technically deserve, because this is who they voted into office, unfortunately. But the fact of the matter is, it doesn't matter which way you slice this, we get to the same conclusion. Chicago has a crime problem. Okay. They don't have enough police. Okay. President Trump is offering a solution. He's motivated, but the mayor and the governor, they're not motivated to solve the problem. They're more motivated to continue to cause more problems for Chicago, if you ask my opinion. Now, here is the former superintendent of the Chicago Police Department and what he had to say. Take a look.
Yeah, if you look at D.C., that's really, I think, the blueprint for how federal authorities can work with local authorities. But, you know, Jan, their comments are literally absurd to me. And what do they mean by resist and rise up? Are we talking about the I word, insurrection? Let's look at the numbers, because to me, if you don't want the Fed help, then you must be happy with the numbers you have in crime. And we all know the only acceptable number for murder would be 0. But you just quoted some numbers. Think about that. In a Labor Day weekend, 54 people shot, 7 killed. And let's look at the year-to-date numbers. Do you realize that every 19 hours and 58 minutes, someone is murdered in Chicago? Every 4 hours and 19 minutes, someone is shot. And the sad part, you ask yourself, who's shooting who? Who's killing each other? 78% of the victims are black. 81% of the offenders are black. So you've got black and black crime, and yet the governor and the mayor say they don't want any help. So to me, when you refuse help, you're saying you're happy with the numbers, and that is absolutely unacceptable in Chicago right now.
It's definitely unacceptable, and I wonder, where is the NAACP on this? Where's Black Lives Matter on this? You know, I just, for the life of me, I think you guys have heard me say this like a broken record. Isn't it fascinating? A black mayor who believes black people are oppressed and their systematic racism is refusing to get help in order to crack down on crime where black lives are being murdered every single day. How does that work? How do they make sense of that at night when they go to sleep? I just don't get it. It's really, I don't know, an oxymoron, call it whatever you want. But listen, guys, this is why I don't like politics, because the only people who suffer in this stupid nonsense, that all this going back and forth, are the people of Chicago. They don't deserve that. Now, we may have political differences, but we're still talking about American citizens. We're still talking about human beings. And in this particular situation, we're talking about children. People's sons and daughters are murdering each other. And the cops are not really doing anything about it because, one, they don't have the resources. Two, we know it's not really a big of a priority for the mayor as it should be. And it's kind of one of those things where this has always been a problem for Chicago. So, you know, we'll just do whatever we can and keep it pushing. I mean, that's really their attitude. But what about the attitude of the people who live in Chicago? Take a listen.
It's just gone from bad to worse to disaster.
No one really feels safe. It's impossible to feel safe in a city like this, especially with the leadership we have.
These kids are carrying guns like around the ages of 8 years old, and they're killing other 8-year-old kids with guns. It's insane.
My opinion, not enough police officers. The police officers' hands are tied.
So the police is really unappreciative offhand under Brandon Johnson, Lori Lightfoot, J.B. Pritzker. Those are three are the reason why nobody don't want to be a police.
Their policies when it comes to crime is not working at all.
I think the biggest piece of the pie has to be more police officers, more protection. That's what the people want.
I got kids, and I want to see the community better. I run every day out here. I exercise out here. So for the street to be safer, I think it's really good.
So I don't think that's too much to ask for. But this actually segues to our next story, because this is breaking news. A federal court judge just ruled that President Trump is not allowed to deploy National Guard troops no longer to the state of California in an effort to crack down on crime. Now, this was already an ongoing legal battle, of course, but it does answer the question, how far does the president's authority go when deploying National Guard troops in states in an effort to crack down on crime? Well, let's hear more on that now.
Another day, another judge, another courtroom now blocking the Trump administration, this time from deploying National Guard troops in California to fight crime. That injunction has now been in place. It will stay until about the 12th of September, so we should get a ruling sometime around that date. But right now, a judge has ruled you can't do that. This is despite now the efforts in a lot of other cities that we'll talk about in a moment here. Portland, Seattle, Chicago, and maybe even New York City. So, yeah, Baltimore as well.
And with all of these issues bubbling up, you have to imagine that we're back to work, people are back to school, and the Supreme Court is about to be back to work. They have a lot of big decisions on their plate.
Yeah, see, this is the interesting thing about all this, is that the president is getting results where crime is going down in these areas. We already know it's happening in D.C., and if he finds a way to get these troops into these other cities and he even reduces crime, then I mean, what can Democrats say at that point? Even if the court rules that it's unconstitutional and he's not allowed to do it, he has proven that crime can come down if the elected leaders actually do something about it. And that politically is a problem for Democrats. Now, let's actually hear more on this ruling, because I don't really think it's a huge loss for the president. because I definitely believe they knew this was coming. Take a look.
Now, this is actually part 2 of an ongoing legal battle. Part 1 was back in June when Trump first sent the National Guard to California. Gavin Newsom and the state of California sued. They said that overstepped the president's constitutional authority. And originally, this same judge who ruled today, Judge Charles Breyer, ruled in favor of California and Governor Newsom. He said it was unconstitutional. However, just days later, that ruling was actually reversed by the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. They said Donald Trump was within his constitutional authority to send the National Guard troops to California. Now, today's ruling is part 2, and that has to do with what can and cannot those troops do while they're deployed. And what Judge Breyer found today is that in some instances, those troops have crossed the line. That's supposed to separate military from law enforcement. You'll hear people refer to that as the Posse Comitatus Act. It's the idea that military troops should not be engaged in law enforcement activity. And in today's ruling, the judge said there are times when that line was crossed. For example, when troops were used to support law enforcement doing arrests and search warrants, when troops were used to do traffic checkpoints and to do riot control. And so the judge said that line has to be respected and troops cannot be used for any type of law enforcement activity. Importantly, though, Dana, the judge did put his own ruling on hold for 10 days until September 12th to give the Trump administration a chance to appeal. So they certainly will appeal, and we'll see this time whether the Court of Appeals agrees with Judge Breyer or whether they reverse him again.
Now, in regards to this ruling from this judge, what is the bottom line? Well, for the Democrats out there, this is democracy at work. You know, it's interesting how they get up every day and they scream, our democracy has failed. It's fallen apart. Donald Trump has destroyed it. No, the fact that you guys can go to the courts and file these injunctions and they actually hear what you have to say, and then it even gets appealed to the next level. And if you don't agree there, then you can appeal it to the Supreme Court. The fact that you're allowed to do that proves that there is a democracy. Now, we know it's a republic, so it's a limited democracy, but my point is, for Democrats out there that scream, they're not making a whole lot of sense, okay? And the second thing is that, again, if President Trump proves he can get results, I mean, there's no going back from this. The American people will know that the government can do something about it, especially at the federal level. And that is not good news for Democrats. Now, of course, Gavin Newsom did respond to this ruling, and Fox News had something to say about it. So let's take a look.
Governor Gavin Newsom responding with this post. He writes, federal court granted our injunction blocking Trump's illegal use of the military for domestic law enforcement. The ruling is clear. Trump is breaking the law by trying to create a national police force with himself as its chief. And yet, Jonathan, the judge also said that the 300 National Guard troops in L.A. right now can stay there.
Right. It's a bit of an anomaly. Frankly, this is part of the dynamics of this situation. I think President Trump realized he's going to win either way. He's forcing these Democratic politicians to fight every effort of the feds to increase law enforcement efforts in their cities, in their state. And that's not good optics. It plays well, obviously, for the sort of base of the Democratic Party, but not for a lot of other people. Chicago is a good example of that. I'm from Chicago, and I don't know anyone that really feels safe in Chicago, certainly not on the South Side.
See, you don't have to be a political strategist to know exactly what's happening, because this is human nature. Go back to high school. Democrats are making a fatal mistake. They're taking the bait. They're in reaction mode. They're not thinking through their responses. They don't have a unified message. Well, I guess the only unified message they have is let's fight against President Trump and let's disagree on everything that he does, even if it actually helps the people that put us in this elected office. And so it's really interesting how they're trying to navigate all that. Now, the president did respond to this ruling during that Oval Office press conference he had earlier, where a reporter did ask him a question about it. And I don't think it went well for that reporter. Take a look.
Everyone March today in California ruled that your deployment of National Guard troops to Los Angeles was illegal. Do you have any response?
Well, it was a radical left judge. But very importantly, what did you not tell me in that question or statement that you made pretty much of a statement, I think?
Well, I was asking for your response.
No, you didn't say what the judge said, though. The judge said, but you can leave the 300 people that you already have in place. They can continue to be in place. That's all we need. But why didn't you put that as part of your statement? Because the same judge ruled exactly as you said, except the judge said that you could leave the 300 people that you already have in place. They can stay, they can remain, they can do what they have to do. Thank you very much, everybody.
Yeah, and that's the full picture of the ruling. And it's not going to be reported that way, of course, because we have, a significant amount of bias in the media. And what I find to be interesting repeatedly as we continue to talk about what's going on every single day is Democrats are screaming, acting like children, and President Trump is actually running the country. Now, who are you more likely to believe, right? And here's an example of that childish behavior from Democrats. This is Governor Tim Walz at an event where he's wishing death upon the president. Take a look.
You get up in the morning and you doom scroll through things, and although I will say this, the last few days you woke up thinking there might be news. Just saying. There will be news sometime, just so you know, there will be news.
Well, let's just understand what he is suggesting, okay? There was a rumor going around only with people on the left over the weekend that President Trump had fallen ill and passed away. And that's the news that he was referring to. And that's what Democrats are obsessed with. That's what they're talking about. Notice they're not talking about solutions. They're not talking about actually fighting for people like you and me. They're not talking about collaborating and working with the president. They're only talking about fighting against them. And that's why I just can't listen to anything that they say and take it seriously, because they are not serious. They're acting like children, and they accuse the president of being childish. If that's not childish behavior, then I don't know what is.
It's sort of crazy, but last week I did numerous news conferences, all successful. They went very well, like this is going very well. And then I didn't do any for 2 days, and they said, there must be something wrong with him. Biden wouldn't do them for months. You wouldn't see him. And nobody ever said there was ever anything wrong with him, and we know he wasn't in the greatest of shape. No, I heard that. I get reports. Now, you knew I did an interview that lasted for about an hour and a half with somebody, and everybody saw that was on one of your competitors. I did numerous shows and also did a number of truths, long truths, I think pretty poignant truths. No, I was very active over the weekend. They also knew I went out to visit some people at the club that I own, pretty nearby on the Potomac River. And no, I've been very active, actually, over the weekend. I didn't hear that one. That's pretty serious stuff.
I'm glad it's
well, it's fake news. It's just it's so fake. That's why the media has so little credibility. I knew they were saying, like, is he okay? How's he feeling? What's wrong? I said, I just left. And it's also sort of a longer weekend, it's Labor Day weekend. So I would say a lot of people know I was very active this Labor Day. I had heard that, but I didn't hear it to that extent.
Yeah, so that's the president responding to this nonsense. The fact that we even have to talk about it, I should tell you everything. I mean, it's just ridiculous. But again, childish behavior. That's what Democrats are obsessed with at this point, because that's all they can be, because their whole identity is based on fighting against President Trump, as I like to say very often. And that's why there's not much to actually agree with them on, if anything at all, because it's not about me and you. It's about them. And as long as it's that way, I think the party will continue to fail. Now, let's circle back on this ruling from the judge as far as the scope of the National Guard and their authority. But ultimately, what is the bottom line to this entire ruling from this judge? President Trump is focused on getting results, so he's going to win regardless.
Right. Well, a National Guard is designed to operate within these states. They have limits upon them, and the president has limits upon him. Wes Moore also said something interesting, and I think smart, which is Democrats don't have a messaging problem. They have a results problem. Mm-hmm. And I think when you look at the weekend violence in Chicago, that's part of the results of Democrats, right? And Trump is very focused on results. So he says, what's the quickest line to get this under control in D.C. or Chicago? And that, by the way, makes my opponents flip out and act like idiots. And he finds this, right? Now, the Constitution keeps him within some bounds, and he has to be careful about what he deploys troops for, right? So on an immigration front, he can do that because it's a federal concern. When they were guarding federal buildings and doing force protection in LA, that was on the table. When you have a federal district like DC and you get results there by deploying National Guard, a lot of people look at that and go, this seems fine. I was at Union Station yesterday. There were no vagrants. There was no sort of underlying threat there. There were National Guard folks just standing around calmly while a bunch of protesters yelled about how they were fascists, which I found sort of ironic because they weren't fascisting very well, because the crowd was, happily protesting there. A lot of folks look at that and go, if this improves my life and it's a temporary situation, that's fine. And I think Trump gets on the right side of this issue by staying within bounds and sending that message.
Yeah, see, this leads to the impression I have of President Trump's second term, is he is definitely pushing the limits of presidential authority. But that doesn't mean it's a negative thing. In fact, it's a great thing. It provides clarity of our U.S. Constitution. It provides clarity on things that may have been misinterpreted in the past from different courts at different levels. And this is what you would want in a healthy democracy, for both sides to debate and obviously have that fight in a courtroom, not physically like Democrats like to do recently. But I think it's time to hear from you guys in the comment section below. First, what is your take on this judge ruling that President Trump is not allowed to use National Guard troops to do anything law enforcement related? Let me know if you agree with that. If you were a congressman, would you seek to change that law, or do you like it the way that it is? And then finally, let's get your take on what happened over the past weekend in Chicago. It continues to contradict the mayor and the governor as they say things are safe and going well. But clearly, the people of Chicago don't believe that, and the numbers don't support it. Let me know what your thoughts are about everything we discussed in this video in the comment section below. Now, in our next video, the president has demanded answers regarding the COVID vaccine. This is truly a bombshell because it's the first time in history from the president that he is actually questioning the vaccine that he helped roll out. And this includes the ongoing dramatic fight in the CDC between RFK Jr. and staffers. So if you missed out on that video from yesterday, all you have to do is click on it because it's coming up right now.